This is the video for Act 3, Scene 1, and this is the climax. So when we think to Freytag's Pyramid, obviously you've got the exposition, that's going to be Act 1, the conflict and the rise in action, we've got Act 2, and then Act 3 really is the climax. And it starts off a very climactic scene. It's the fight scene with Mercutio, Tybalt, Romeo, and Benvolio. So your objectives, you're going to paraphrase the scene quickly. You're going to analyse only 3 devices, level 1, 2, 3, their effects on the audience, the whole play and the connections to outside of the text, and you're going to watch various versions of it, and you're going to select your favourite and justify it with a paragraph response, similar to like what you did in the balcony scene. The versions I encourage you to actually watch before, maybe. There's a bunch on there. There's more than this even. There's the Baz Luhrmann one, Romeo and Juliet. There's a ballet version, an opera version, the 2013, the 1968 stage versions. Some kids doing it in Walmart. And then there's obviously the full versions, the Orlando Bloom and the Royal Shakespeare one on Google Classroom. I couldn't get just clips from YouTube, so you're going to have to go and watch the, if you want to pick those ones, you're going to have to find the full ones on Google Classroom and fast forward to the scene. So let's begin. I want to talk quickly about structure. Obviously, in a story we will analyse the words, the word choice, their effect. But obviously this is poetry, so we need to consider structure and form here. So looking at 3 types of, I guess, poetic form. We've got prose, no rhyme, no meter, what you'd find in normal literature in a normal book, like of Mice and Men, for instance. It's written like a normal book, and it's often used in Shakespeare for the lower classes, although not always. Then we've got blank verse. Blank verse is most of Romeo and Juliet. It is written in iambic pentameter, but there's no rhyme scheme there. So this would be like, Benvolio talking normally, Romeo talking normally. Whenever we don't see the rhyme scheme, but it's from a higher status character, it's probably going to be blank verse written in iambic pentameter. And then we've got rhymed verse finally. So rhymed verse would be the couplets, 2 lines that rhyme, or the AB format that you might see in a sonnet, for instance, in a quatrain of a sonnet. And this is usually for romantic scenes, for giving advice or giving a moral of the story. Or very, very serious scenes. So moving on, we start the scene with, it's in a street, Mercutio, Benvolio and various servants are there. Benvolio says, "I pray thee, good Mercutio, let's retire. The day is hot, the Capulets abroad, and if we meet we shall not escape a brawl. For now these hot days is the mad blood stirring." So this is actually written in blank verse. And what he's saying there is, come on Mercutio, let's go home. It's getting really, really hot and the Capulets are about. If we meet them, we'll probably get in a fight and we won't be able to escape it. And basically the hot weather gets people hot-headed. Mercutio then speaks in blank verse. So there's no rhyme scheme. There's no... Benvolio speaks in blank verse with iambic pentameter. Mercutio speaks in prose. Now, the reason for this, Mercutio is not a lower class character like a servant, for instance, but he's speaking very informally. This is the kind of character Mercutio is. He's very informal, very bawdy, and often speaks in prose. Did I say verse before? I can't remember. Prose. And he says, "Thou art like one of these fellows that when he enters the confines of a tavern, claps his sword upon the table and says, 'God send me no need of thee.'" So we, again, written in prose like any normal story. There's no I-ams here. "Thou art like one of these people that goes to a pub and smashes his sword on the table and he says, 'I don't need my, God, please don't give me a need to use my sword.'" Kind of aggressive, and he's saying that about Benvolio. And by the operation of the second cup, so when you've had your second cup of whatever you're drinking, you draw it on the drawer. So you draw your sword on the barkeeper when there's no need to do so. Now this is actually a stark contrast to what we see about Benvolio. We see Benvolio as a peacekeeper in Act 1, Scene 1, for instance. He's the one who tries to keep the peace. "Put up thy swords." These guys know not what they do. It doesn't say these guys, but they know not what they do. "I just try to keep the peace." Benvolio says, "Am I like such a fellow? Is that really like what I am?" Mercutio says, "Come, come, thou art as a hot a jack in thy mood as any in Italy." So you're as hot-headed as any person in the country. And as soon moved to be moody, and as soon moody to be moved. So what he's saying here is like anyone, you're as quickly to be angry, and as angry to be moved into a fight often. So again, he's speaking in prose here, very informal, and he's saying Benvolio is quite an aggressive character who gets in fights quickly. He's very hot-headed. And Benvolio replies, "And what to?" So he said, "What of it?" basically. But Mercutio takes the word "to" and has some wordplay here. He says, "Nay, and there were two such, we should have none shortly." So he's saying, if there were two of you, we wouldn't have any of you soon, for one would kill the other. You, he says, you, why, thou wilt quarrel with a man that have a hair more or a hair less in his beard than thou hast. So you'll fight and argue with someone who's got more or less beard hair than you for no other reason as that, very petty. Thou wilt quarrel with a man for cracking nuts, having no other reason but because thou hast a hazel eye. So hazel eyes are like a browny, greeny colour. I've got hazel eyes, actually. Many of you probably have, I think. And hazel nuts, obviously, so there's a bit of wordplay there. So he would fight a man for cracking nuts because you have eyes the colour of a type of nut. What eye but such an eye would spy out such a quarrel? So, you know, you're always the one looking for a fight. What person's eye would always be looking for a fight? You're that guy, basically. Thy head is full of quarrels as an egg is full of meat. So your head is full of arguments and looking for fights as an egg is full of its yolk. And yet thy head hath been beaten as addle as an egg for quarrelling. So your head has been scrambled and beaten like an egg is because of the quarrelling. Thou hast quarrelled with a man for coughing in the street because he hath wakened thy dog that hath lain asleep in the sun. So you fought with people for coughing because they've woken street dogs up. Didst thou not fall out with a tailor for wearing his new doublet before Easter? So didn't you have an argument once with a tailor for wearing the suit before it was fashionable to wear it? With another for tying his new shoes with an old ribbon. So you not fight someone for tying their new shoes with an old set of laces, and yet thou wilt tutor me for quarrelling. So you lecture me for quarrelling. Again, it's just a very stark difference between what Mercutio's saying of Benvolio and the Benvolio we've actually seen in the play. Again, Act 1, Scene 1, he tries to keep the peace. He seems to be a very, very nice bloke, to be honest. And Bene, obviously Italian for good, and yet we're hearing all these stories about it. Benvolio speaking in blank verse. And I were so apt to quarrel as thou art any man should, by the fee simple of my life for an hour and a quarter. So if I was as keen as fighting as you, my insurance rate would be higher, basically. The fee simple, oh simple, so that's just silly. And then Tybalt and other Capulets come. Benvolio says, by my head, here comes the Capulets. By my heel, I care not. So he really just doesn't care. And then Tybalt comes in, follow me close, for I will speak to them. And he goes, gentlemen, Gideon, a word with one of you. Mercutio, and but one word with us, couple it with something, make it a word and a blow. So we've got Tybalt speaks in blank verse, he speaks in iambs, Mercutio replies in prose, and he basically says like, oh, you want one word with me? You know, just put it together, and why don't you make something of it? Come and fight me. Couple it with something. So couple your words with a blow, with a fist or a punch or a slash with a knife or a sword. And then Tybalt replies in prose. So what we see here is, you know, he speaks in iambs. Tybalt has throughout the play has spoken in iambs, and Mercutio speaks in prose, not because he's lower class, but because he's quite informal and quite bawdy. But in this instance, he will be being disrespectful to Tybalt, and it draws Tybalt in, and Tybalt actually replies in prose in another disrespectful manner. He says, "You shall find me apt enough to that, sir, and you will give me occasion, so you'll give me reason to come to blows and fight you. Mercutio says, could you not take some occasion without giving? And that basically means, like, can't you find any other reason for without me giving you one? Come on, let's just have a fight, basically. He says, Mercutio, thou consortest with Romeo, so you hang out with Romeo. Mercutio replies, consort? What, dost thou make us minstrels? So are you basically saying, there's a bit of wordplay here. We've got consort means to hang out with, but consort sounds a bit like concert. Are you saying that we're musicians? And now make musicians of us, look to hear nothing but discord. So if you do say we're musicians, then all you'll hear is arguments and quarrelling and fighting. And here's my fiddlestick, here's my instrument. He pulls out his sword. Here's that shall make you dance. Zounds, consort. So he's inviting him to come and fight here. Benvolio, the Benvolio we know, says, we talk here in the public haunt of men, so we're here in the streets of people. Either withdraw unto some private place, or reason coldly of your grievances, or else depart. Here all lies goes on. So, we're out in public, everyone can see what we're doing. We all know what the prince said. If we get in a fight, and we're going to be punished for it. So either we need to go somewhere private, or we need to calmly discuss our complaints, calmly talk about our problems and resolve it, or just leave, because everyone's staring at us. And Mercutio says, men's eyes were made to look, let them gaze. I will not budge for no man's pleasure. So what he's saying here is, people were given eyes to look, let them look. I don't care, I'm not moving for no one. And then Romeo enters. Tybalt, well, peace be with you, sir. Here comes my man. So obviously Tybalt's still very angry about the party. He's looking for revenge with Romeo. Mercutio says, but I'll be hanged, sir, if he wear you livery. Marry, go before to field, and he'll be your follower. Your worship in that sense may call him man. So what he's saying, I'll be dead if he's your man. I'll be hanged, I'll be dead. That's a bit of foreshadowing. We know what happens to Mercutio. You guys already know. And he says, marry, go to the field, go before the field, go to the dueling field. Obviously, this is 1500s. People would often go to a field, settle their grievances with a sword fight where they duel, and he'll follow you, he'll go with you. Your worship, and then we've got the capital W here, so we know it's a divine figure, like a god. In that sense, may call him man, manservant. So what he's saying here is, by doing that, Romeo will go with you, he'll be your follower, and he'll be doing God's work. So the person you worship, God, can call him a manservant for dueling you and battling you and doing God's work, basically. It says, Romeo, the love I bear thee can afford no better term than this. So the love I have for you is so little that I can afford to say, thou art a villain, you are a villain. Romeo replies, Tybalt, the reason that I have to love thee doth much excuse the appertaining rage to such a greeting. Villain am I none, therefore farewell, I see thou knowest me not. So Romeo's coming in, speaking in blank verse, speaking in I ams, very respectful. And what he's saying here is, I love you. You don't know why I love you, but I love you, and it excuses your rage. Obviously, we know why he loves him. He's just married Juliet, so he now sees Tybalt as a family member. And he says, I excuse your rage. I'm not a villain. You do not know me. And he tries to leave. He says, therefore, farewell. He tries to leave. And Tybalt replies, boy, this shall not excuse the injuries that thou hast done me. Therefore, turn and draw. So what he's saying here is, your politeness, you being polite here, doesn't excuse the, coming to our parties, the niceties you're doing doesn't excuse coming to our parties and insulting me in such a way. Therefore, turn around and draw your sword, pull out your sword and fight. Romeo says, I do protest, I never injured thee, but love thee better than thou canst devise. So I love you more than you can ever know. But until you shall know, basically, till thou shalt know the reason of my love, until you know why I love you, and so good Capulet, which name I tender, as dearly as mine own, be satisfied. So, you know, you're a Capulet and I love the Capulets. Obviously, we know why, but no one else does. Benvolio, Mercutio, none of them know he's married Juliet. Only the audience does in this scene. It is as dearly as mine own, be satisfied. So, please just accept this. Leave me alone. Mercutio's fuming. He says, "Oh, calm, dishonourable, vile submission." So he's talking to Romeo here. He's basically saying, "Romeo, why are you such a coward?" And he says, "Alla staccato," which is their Italian terms for sword fighting. And he carries it away, draws out his sword to fight. He calls Tybalt, "You rat catcher." Now, obviously, we know Ratcatcher is a reference to Tybalt, the fiery cat in Reynard the Fox. "Will you walk? Will you come here and fight me? What wouldst thou have with me? Good king of cats, nothing but one of your 9 lives." So I don't know if you know this, it's said that cats have 9 lives. It's like an old proverb or story, myth, I don't know. That I mean to make bold with all. So he's basically saying, I'm planning to beat one of the 9 lives from you. And as you shall use me hereafter, do I beat the rest of the 8. So whatever you do after, I'm going to take the other 8 as well. Will you pluck your sword out of his pilcher? So will you take your sword out of the scabbard, the thing you put a sword into, by the ears? Make haste, let mine be about your ears. So he said, again, there's wordplay there. He says, pull your sword by the ears, which will be the hilt, and I'm going to cut your ears off with mine. It be out. So before you even take your sword out, cut your ears off. He says, I am for you, and he draws his sword. Romeo says, General Mercutio, put thy rapier up, so put your swords away. Mercutio's, come sir, your posada, and then they fight. Now obviously the stage directions, like a lot of the play, very vague, and it gives the actors the opportunity to do what they want with this, really, and they can go on for these huge, big fights. You might see some ballet versions I've posted, where they really, really practice and train to have these huge fight scenes. And Romeo says, draw, Benvolio, beat down their weapons. Benvolio, please, stop them, take their weapons away. Gentlemen, for shame, forbear this outrage. So he's saying, stop doing what you're doing, please, it's shameful. Tybalt, Mercutio, the prince expressly have forbidden bandying in Verona Street. So he's told us we're not allowed to fight. You know what's going to happen if we do. He says, hold Tybalt, good Mercutio. And he draws his sword to try and disarm them. He puts his arm up to run in front of Mercutio, and Tybalt stabs underneath Romeo's arm, and he cuts Mercutio. And a Capulet says, away, Tybalt, run away. Mercutio says, I am hurt. A plague on both your houses. Now this is one of the most famous lines from Romeo and Juliet. A plague on both of your houses. Essentially, it's a bit foreshadowing because we know what happens to the Montagues and we know what happens to the Capulets. This is death to both your families. Basically, I am sped. I'm done. I'm dying. And the Tybalt and his mates leave. Is he gone and have nothing? So is he leaving and he's not even got a scratch on him? Benvolio says, what, art thou hurt? Aye, yes, aye. A scratch, married is enough. So he's like, yes, I've been scratched. It's enough. Where's my page? Where's my servant? Go, villain, fetch a surgeon. And the servant goes and to get a surgeon to help Mercutio. Romeo comes in and says, courage, man. The hurt cannot be much. It can't be that bad. She says, no, 'tis not so deep as well nor so wide as a church door. So obviously the religious imagery here. He's about to ascend to heaven. But 'tis enough 'twill serve, so it will do. I'm done, I'm dying. Ask for me tomorrow, and you shall find me a grave man. You shall find me a dead man in a grave. Obviously there's wordplay here. Grave, obviously like doomful, impending doom, and then grave 6 feet under, where you bury people. I am peppered, so I'm finished, I'm done. I warrant for this world, so I'm done for this world. A plague on both your houses, he repeats it again. Zounds, a dog, a rat, a mouse, a cat, to scratch a man to death. So he's calling Tybalt an animal here. a braggart, a rogue, a villain that fights by the book of arithmetic. So he's just read how to fight in books and he's memorized it. Why the devil came you between us? I was hurt under your arms. He's blaming Romeo here. I thought all for the best. So he's only trying to do what was best for everyone. Help me into some house, Benvolio, or I shall faint. A plague on both your houses. He says it 3 times. They have made worms meat out of me. So obviously he's for the earth. He's going to be put underground, and therefore the worms will eat him. I have it. I've had it. I'm dead. And soundly too. Your houses. So there we go. And all exit but Romeo. Romeo says, this gentleman, the prince's near ally. The prince is near ally, so the prince's close relative. Obviously, the prince and Mercutio were actually related. My very friend hath got a mortal hurt, so my very friend has been wounded mortally, fatally. He is gonna die in my behalf, so it's because of me and my reputation staying with Tybalt's slander. So Tybalt basically called me a bunch of things, called me a villain. That's what slander is, when you say things about someone, often lies, negative comments. So he slandered me by calling me a villain. Tybalt, that an hour have been my cousin. So only an hour have you been my cousin, because I've just married Juliet. Oh, sweet Juliet, thy beauty have made me effeminate. Now he means weak here. So obviously I feel that this is very sexist. You know, in Shakespeare's day and age, it might be considered more normal, but by today's standards, he's basically saying, you know, you've made me more womanly, and therefore you've made me weak because I'm in touch with my feelings. And in my temper softened valour still. So my temper is now softened, and so is my sword. And then Valio comes back and says, oh, Romeo, Romeo, brave Mercutio is dead. So Mercutio has been killed here. That gallant spirit hath aspired to the class. So, that brave soul, that brave person has gone to heavens, which too untimely here did scorn the earth. So he died too young. He was too young to die. And when he says, this day's black fate on more days doth depend, this but begins, the woe others must end. So the horrible events of the day will affect the future, and trouble starts here, and days in the future will end it, basically. And Tybalt comes back. Here comes the furious Tybalt back again, alive, in triumph, and Mercutio slain. So Romeo's angry. He says, away to heaven, respectively, lenity. So Mercutio is on his way to heaven, and fire-eyed fury be my conduct now. So I want revenge. My eyes are fiery with anger and revenge, and I want to attack you. Now Tybalt, take the villain back again, that late thou gavest me, for Mercutio's soul is but a little way above our heads. So he's saying, take back what that you called me a villain, take back the slanderous thing you said about me. Mercutio's soul is on its way to heaven, it's a little bit above our heads. Staying for thine to keep him company. So he's waiting for you now, because you're going to die soon. I'm going to kill you, and then you can both go to heaven. Either you or I, so either thou or I, or both must go with him. So we're all going to heaven. Tybalt replies, thou wretched boy that disconsort him here, shout with him hence. This shall determine that. And they fight. So he's basically saying, you know, you wretched, you disgusting boy that kept company with him while he was on earth, while you were friends with him on earth. You'll join him soon. You'll keep him company from now on in heaven. And then Romeo says, this will determine that. And they fight. And again, there's this huge big fight. Watch the different versions. The Baz Luhrmann version, the scene is quite good. There's lots of religious imagery of it as well in the scene. And Romeo kills Tybalt. And Romeo says, away. Benvolio says, Romeo, away, be gone. He's like, you need to run away. The citizens are up, so the people are coming. And Tybalt's slain, so Tybalt's dead. And everyone's coming. Stand on me, so don't just stand there gawping and looking all blank. Run away. The prince will doom thee, so the prince will sentence you to death if thou art taken. Hence be gone away. So run away, dude. Now Romeo says, I am fortune's fool. Now obviously, this is really important because the theme of fate. He's Fortune has a capital F, and therefore is a deity of some sort, a god of some sort, and he is basically the plaything for Fortune, the godly embodiment of fate. And Romeo runs away. And the citizen comes in. Which way ran he that killed Mercutio? Tybalt, that murderer, which way ran he? There lies that Tybalt. So where did Tybalt go? The murderer who killed Mercutio. Beverly was like, he's there, he's dead. Up, sir, go with me. I charge thee in the prince's name, obey. So he's putting him under citizen arrest here. He's saying, you stay with me. I'm getting the prince to come. Do as you're told. And then the prince and Lord and Lady Montague and Lord and Lady Capulet and a bunch of others come on the scene. And the prince says, where are the vile beginners of this fray? So who are the evil people who started this fight? And Benvolio says, O noble prince, I can discover all, so I can tell you everything. The unlucky manage of this fatal brawl. So now, if we look, Benvolio is speaking in rhyming verse, or rhymed verse. And this is a very important shift now. They're going from this bawdy, violent way to a very solemn, sullen, sort of sad state of affairs. I'll tell you everything about this fight. There lies the man slain by young Romeo that slew thy kinsman brave Mercutio. So there lies Tybalt, killed by Romeo, that killed your relative brave Mercutio. And then Lady Capulet says, Tybalt, my cousin, O my brother's child, O prince, O cousin, husband, O the blood is spilt of my dear kinsman, prince, as thou art true, for blood of ours shed blood of Montague. So again, we've got the rhyming couplet there. She's speaking in rhyme verse as well. And I think this separates them from Romeo, Tybalt and Mercutio, none of whom spoke in rhymed verse. And Benvolio is going back to speaking in rhyme verse now, and it separates them from the violence and the aggressive sort of nature. But Tybalt, my cousin, it's actually my nephew, O prince, O cousin, husband, O the blood is spilt of my dear kinsman and my relative. Because you said you're going to punish anyone who started a fight, you have to be true. For blood of ours shed the blood of Montague. So because they killed one of ours, it's only fair that you kill one of yours. The Princess Benvolio, who began this bloody fray, who started this fight. Tybalt, here slain, whom Romeo's hand did slay. So Tybalt started the fight, here he is dead, Romeo killed him. Benvolio continues, and it's quite a lot here. So he says, Romeo that spoke him fair bade him bethink how nice the quarrel was, and urged withal your high displeasure. So Romeo, he was actually politely, really, really politely, and spoke very fairly and fondly of Tybalt, asked him to stop and think about what he was doing, how stupid the fighting was, and he urged him to think about you, Prince, and that you will be annoyed by this. All this uttered with gentle breath, calm look, knees humbly bowed. So he was subservient to Tybalt, bowed himself, prostrated himself, and said, please don't do this. I'm not your enemy. And then could not take truce with an unruly spleen. So he couldn't calm down the unruly temper of Tybalt. Deaf to peace. So I like that. So he's deaf to peace. He can't hear peace. But that he tilts. So he thrusts the sword with piercing steel at bull Mercutio's breast. So all he's doing here is he's recounting exactly what happened in the fight. And this might be important in Elizabethan England as well, because some members of the audience wouldn't actually see the fight. So by recounting it in the poetic form, higher class people who are often their view is often obstructed, they can now hear exactly what has happened. So he pierced Mercutio's breast, he pierced his heart, who all as hot turns deadly point to point. So Mercutio fought back as well. Everyone was really hot-tempered, and they all tried to fight sword to sword, and with a martial scorn, with one hand beats cold death aside, and with the other sends it back to Tybalt. So he's pushing death aside, and he's sending it back to Tybalt, whose dexterity retorts it. So he avoids it because he's really skilled as well. So he's just saying the two were fighting. They were both really angry. Mercutio was blocking him off and then fighting back, and then Tybalt was blocking it off because he was a really skilled fighter. And Romeo cried aloud, "Hold friends, friends apart." And swifter than his tongue, his agile arm beats down their fatal point. So he comes in between them basically, and twixt them rushes underneath whose arm an envious thrust from Tybalt hit the life of stout Mercutio. So Romeo runs in, underneath his arm comes a thrust from the sword of the envious or jealous Tybalt, and it hit the brave Mercutio, and then Tybalt fled, he ran away, but by and by comes back to Romeo. So he came back to Romeo because he's angry, and who had but newly entertained revenge. So once Tybalt was gone, Romeo started getting angry, doubting himself, wishing that he'd have done something. And then when Tybalt comes back, he's got this idea of revenge. And tot they go like lightning, for I could draw to part them. So they went at it like lightning. They were quick as lightning. Before I could even get in there and stop them, was the brave Tybalt slain, was stout Tybalt slain, and as he fell, did Romeo turn and fly. So as Tybalt died, Romeo's run away. This is the truth, or let Benvolio die. So I swear on my life, Oxenbalao, I swear to God, this is the truth. And then Lady Capulet says, he is a kinsman of the Montague, so he's related to the Montagues. Affection makes him false, he speaks not true. Some 20 of them fought in this black strife, and all those 20 could but kill one life. I beg for justice, which thou, prince, must give. Romeo slew Tybalt, Romeo must not live. There's actually a really good martial arts film set in America called Romeo Must Die, with like DMX and Jet Li. And yeah, I was just thinking of that now. Perhaps you could watch that as one of your examples. So what she's saying is like he's related to the Montagues. He loves them, and therefore you can't believe a word he says. 20 of them fought here, and it took all 20 of them to kill Tybalt, to kill but one life, which was Tybalt. Therefore showing that he's a really good fighter, and it was really unfair, and she wants justice because Romeo killed Tybalt. Romeo has to die. Princess Romeo slew him, he slew Mercutio, who now the price of his dear blood doth owe. So who's going to pay the price for Mercutio? Well, Tybalt's paid it. Not Romeo, Prince, he was Mercutio's friend. His fault concludes, but what the law should end. So basically, he's killed Tybalt, and he's only done what the law would do anyway. Because Tybalt killed Mercutio, he'd be hung, and Romeo's just done that for you, so leave him alone. And for that offence, immediately we do exile him hence. So we banish him from Verona. Obviously, we know he goes to Mantua, and he's been banished, and this is the problem now because obviously he's split up, and this is where all of the problems occur from now. Really, I have an interest in your hates proceeding. My blood for your rubrals doth lie a bleeding. So my relative has died because of your barbaric, it says, your violent fighting, and he's now bleeding, dead. But I'll immerse you with so strong a fine. I'll punish you heavy with such strong a fine that you shall all repent the loss of mine. So I'm going to punish you so much that you're going to be really sad and regret that Mercutio has died. I will be deaf to pleading and excuses, nor tears nor prayers shall purchase out abuses. So what he's saying here is, I'm not going to listen to any excuses. You can't cry, you can't beg, you can't pray. I don't care. Therefore use none. Let Romeo hence in haste, else when he's found the hour is his last. Bear hence this body and attend our will. Mercy but murders, pardoning those that kill. So what he's saying is, if Romeo's got to go, he's banished now. When he comes back, he'll be killed. The hour will be his last. But hence this body will attend our will. So take this body our way. Take Mercutio and Tybalt away. Mercy but murders, pardoning those that kill. So showing mercy to killers only ends with more murder. And then that's it. That's the scene. So again, just summarise it. 5 to 10 bullet points. Really, really short. Just show me briefly that you understand what's going on. Pick a few devices. There's loads to choose from. and then watch another version of this scene, pick which one is your favourite, and write a response, a paragraph response, giving 2 pieces of evidence explaining why it's your favourite. I would encourage you to look at student shout out number 3 to see exemplars from other people's work when they did it last, when we did it for the balcony scene. There's a couple of people there that I picked out that did a really, really great job. So I encourage you to go watch the YouTube videos or the slides of their work so you can see what an A looks like. Good luck.